Hello, and welcome to Opinions, episode 33, which I have called Doc Rivers, the coach of 9 lives. My name's Harry, and I have...
And my name's Ben.
Not
Back again, another episode. Not in the studio today.
Unfortunately, there's other things going on. I need to run to a physio at some point. We did about 15 minutes of this podcast before I realized that my mic was muted.
Yeah. Moment of silence for that. It
Big
happens.
rip.
It's fine.
Big
But we
rip.
can carry on.
Very annoying. So, as we mentioned previously, that you guys will never hear because it was never actually recorded, so it's not a mentioned previously. This is real right now. We need to apologize to the Los Angeles Lakers, and specifically Anthony Davis. My junk is in trouble. But
that should be the name of the episode.
we might have to rename it to My Junk is in Trouble. But before we talk about the Lakers and whether or not my junk is actually in trouble, I want to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers, because the other name for this episode is that Doc Rivers is the coach of 9 lives. And I want to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. They lost to the Houston Rockets the other day in double overtime. And for me, we mentioned this a lot, that I think that the regular season games are a little bit more important than a lot of other people, because I think that the habits that regular season games show is super important and will come back to bite you in the playoffs. And
I mean, you mentioned last episode, the starting the season, the first 14 games can indicate pretty much if it's a championship caliber team or not. And I think the consistency in the season definitely is an indication of postseason.
Yes, and I've said from the beginning that I thought this year the Philadelphia 76ers was a championship winning team, and they've done everything in their power to make me look like an idiot.
So far, yeah.
They go on win streaks with all of their top players out, winning against top teams, and then the moment their top players come back, they lose to teams like the Rockets, who are very, very actively tanking to try and get the number 1 pick next year.
One of the few teams in the league who are genuinely actually losing games to tank. So it's not a good sign.
Still winning fun games though every so often. But yeah, they beat the 76ers and in double OT, and then they won by 10.
Yeah. Which, I think the first thing that when we both saw the scoreline, the first thing I checked was Embiid's stats, and he actually balled out. He had 39 points. So he did everything he could possibly.
Embiid, statistically, was perfect.
Yeah.
He pretty much was on 50% from the field. He was 14 from 17 at the free throw line. He got rebounds. He got a couple assists. He got some steals. He got some blocks. He finished with and let's be really clear, plus and minuses are not everything. The plus minus is very is what's the word I'm after here? Is influenced by the game, but he was one of 2 on the 76ers to finish with a positive plus minus.
Yeah. Shout out to Tobias Harris too, who actually had a really good game. Dropped 27 points, 3 steals, 7 from 8 from 3-point line.
Ballin'.
So honestly, the starters were going quite well. I don't know if we mentioned, but did we say Harden is coming back from an injury?
Yes.
So that was a factor.
So there's Doc's excuse as to why he didn't beat a rookie / young team of Rockets. But I just don't... This team just makes me look like an idiot every week.
Well, I mean, it's probably making Doc Rivers look a little bit like the same as well. I think we were also saying as well that, I mean... rotation-wise, like bench-wise, it looks like they've got so many options on this team. The starters, when they're pretty much like firing away, the bench is still there backing them up. Like, what more can be done? And then you kind of turn to the coach. And I think, I tend to try and defend coaches, but I think you make a valid point here.
And we also mentioned that I think it's ridiculous that on his first game back, Harden played 38 minutes. He played more than Embiid did.
Yeah. And I think we were saying generally you should be easing them back in, give them maybe high 20s in terms of minutes. But 38's a lot for someone to come back off an
And
injury.
I know
expect them
there
to
was
play.
double overtime, but you can't. Doc Rivers has this really bad habit of relying too much on star players.
Mm,
And
yeah.
it's not something that you can do in the playoffs. You can't. Well, you need to stick to minutes, because otherwise you'll get to the playoffs and that's when you want to increase their minutes, they'll be gassed.
Yeah.
The
Obviously, we don't necessarily want to see like crazy load management, but you still need to be reasonable about your usage rates throughout the season.
load management is not playing a game. Like, I want to see Harden play every week, and Harden loves to hoop, but you need to save him from himself. You need to lock him in at, like, 32. If he's coming back from injury, maybe late 20s, so maybe like 28 minutes, maybe early 30s. But to get to 38 minutes on his first game back, I think is a little bit not good.
Yeah. I want to put a question to you. So obviously we're finding that Doc isn't getting the best out of this team, and this kind of relates back to your 9 lives. Like, he's had multiple seasons with playoff level teams, both the Clippers, now the Sixers. He's had multiple All Stars on these teams, so it feels like it's kind of got to the point where now we can blame him. But assuming he's going, what would be a, I guess, suitable replacement? Because I have an idea in the interim.
Oh.
He does have assistant coach Dave Yeager, who I'm partial to because he was actually coach of the Grizzlies for a while. But yeah, I feel like as assistant coach, he's got a little bit of a insight into the team already. Got a decent starting point, and I think record-wise, Dave Yeager hasn't been the worst. On the Kings, I give him a pass because he played coached 3 seasons for Sacramento. Had a pretty low winning percentage, but with a decent team with the Grizzlies from 2013 to 16, he had a 61% win rate, 67% win rate, and 51% win rate. So I think with a good team, Dave Yeager can do good things. I think he lost his head coach job with Sacramento because they needed to put the blame on someone. So I don't know if you can back me up here, but I feel like given a better coach, this roster should do significantly better.
100%.
Am I right?
And here's the thing, right? I love to say what your problem is. I have no idea who you should get in as a coach. At this stage of the season, if you were to get rid of Doc Rivers, it is probably best to put your assistant coach in as lead coach. There are 2 names that I would potentially think about. One is Daryl Morey. No. Daryl Morey is the GM. Wait, no.
I believe, yeah, GM, yeah.
No. Who's the old Rockets coach?
Well, Steven Silas, I think, is
No, not the current one. The old one.
You're really racking my brain now.
It's hold up. Mike D'Antoni. Sorry.
Yes, of course.
I
We can trim
believe
that down.
that he is. Is he? No, he's overseeing. He's a coaching advisor for the New Orleans Pelicans at the moment. So he. But see, I wouldn't make him head coach. I would put him in as assistant or head of offense, like he was in Brooklyn in 2020 to 2021. I think he needs to put him as your assistant, and then put your assistant up to head, and this comes with a little bit of controversy, but Philadelphia's given up so much to get here. I still think that Udoka is a very solid coach with a very troubled past that, given enough time, someone will get desperate enough for a good coach and take him in.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd agree with that. Strictly coaching-wise, he's obviously a great coach. So I think a team desperate enough to, I guess, make the move, I think, would benefit from that. So I guess those are some decent options. I guess we'll have to see what eventually happens if the team gets to the point where they go, look, someone's got to take the fall for this, and if Doc eventually does get the sack. But
I don't think you can blame anyone else at this stage.
Yeah, they've made the off-season moves. They've got the personnel in terms of players. I think, eventually he's going to run out of his 9 lives.
Yep. 24 games into the season, Philadelphia 76ers are 8th. They are 8 games behind first, and they are exactly 12 wins and 12 losses. They are exactly 0.5. This team should not be a 50% win rate team.
No, especially when their competition in terms of other contenders, Celtics and Bucks, 8 games ahead. And meanwhile, the Bucks have only just got Middleton back, so they shouldn't be trailing by that much.
No.
So I guess we'll see what happens.
Other teams missing star players are doing way better with their win percentages.
Yeah, they're adapting.
Absolutely. So
Celtics without Robert Williams too, so yeah.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed with how the 76ers are going right now. Now, let's talk about the Los Angeles Lakers. Because obviously we have the Lakers icy hot bet going on.
Yeah.
Where if the Lakers make the semifinals, I will slather my junk in icy hot. Because I am confident that it will not happen. And since saying that, so here's the thing, right? I'm still confident. The Lakers are still 10-14, 6 games behind. It's just AD decided to turn up for a couple of games, and then he got the flu.
Yeah, so update on AD. Yeah, after we called him out, started balling out, and then once we mentioned that he was balling out, then he actually had to leave the game early due to flu-like symptoms. So currently out, which is a shame because he was on an absolute tear. He dropped 55 points the other day, which is pretty crazy.
My God, against Washington. Then he got 44 against Milwaukee.
Yeah.
He got a 37 against Phoenix. Like, he's been balling. And I think since I made that statement, they went on like a 3-game win streak. So I was definitely feeling a bit of pressure. And then they went and lost to Cleveland. Thank goodness. But we will shout out. Look, we've been very, very critical of Anthony Davis for the last couple of years. Very critical. But if he can keep up this kind of form, and that's the problem with AD, right? He can play like a god when he's not hurt.
Yeah, definitely. He's absolutely got the skill set for it. It's just the durability that's been an issue.
But he's one bad something from doing something. My back. My leg. My knee. My ankle.
And it goes to show that, without him, and actually the Lakers without him and without LeBron today, they completely fall apart.
Yeah.
They lost to the Raptors 113-126, and just watching bits of that game, you just go, no, it's not happening. They had multiple players try to step up, but it wasn't enough against honestly like a kind of mid East team. So yeah, I think you'll be safe for now, Harry.
I think I'm safe for now. But this is the sort of stuff we want to see from AD. I love it when AD plays aggressive and is unstoppable. But it's also one of those things where during the regular season, someone like AD will be unstoppable. But when you have a 7-game series, like, it's not difficult to see who the main people on the Lakers are giving you points. And so it's pretty easy to then put a defensive scheme where you try to stop AD.
Yep, they just don't have the personnel in terms of like bench depth to adjust in a playoff series with the 7 games. If you lock down AD, lock down LeBron, that's more or less the strategy gone. So I don't think there'll be too much of a threat.
If you just play aggressively against AD, he'll get hurt. And I'm not saying in any way that you should try to intentionally hurt AD. But it is a well-known fact that he would rather play power forward because it is less intensive. And we've seen what happens when he plays at the 5. He's just not physical enough. He hasn't got that... he's fragile.
Yeah. I will add, though, that I'm pretty sure this stat still stands that he is actually leading the league in field goal percentage at the rim. So he's being more aggressive inside this season. But we've seen him at his best when he's got those bigs to back him up. When he's got that season when he had like Marcus Gasol and things like that to the bigger guys who could just kind of take the beating, take the pressure off him for a bit, like guys like Dwight, and then kind of lets him stay in better shape, I suppose.
Last thing on the Lakers, they waived Matt Ryan recently, who did get a random buzzer beater at some point, but he's still kind of not that great. And this, to me, them making space on the roster the Lakers are making a move. They've opened up a roster spot. The With December 15th is, I believe, the trade deadline for this season.
So we've got about a week.
So I think that the Lakers are going to try something before the trade deadline.
Yeah, and so they should, because at this rate they're going to be looking at a pretty high draft spot that they won't even get. So
don't get me started on them becoming a contender with one good trade.
Yeah. Oh boy, that quote.
So
I might segue us quickly, if that's cool, with the little bit on draft, because I do want to mention the Cleveland Cavaliers. We have already touched on them this season, absolutely balling out. Donovan Mitchell joined the team, looking really strong.
I still can't believe the Cavs got someone so early someone of like Donovan Mitchell's caliber.
Yeah. I think honestly, this is what I found interesting, because obviously the Donovan Mitchell move was a bit of a surprise. People expect him to go to the Knicks, but I think the Cavs have made multiple sneaky but good trades. I want to quickly point out first that the Cavs obviously won championship with LeBron,
Yes.
but over the last kind of decade or so, 11 odd years, they've been pretty garbage. I know when I started watching the league, they were pretty much bottom of the league. They just drafted Kyrie. And yeah, they were pretty much a bottom feeder. And in fact, over the last 11 years, they've had 3 number 1 picks, which is Kyrie, Anthony Bennett, Andrew Wiggins. And overall, they've had 8 top 5 picks. So this is a team that has had so many opportunities to draft really talented players and build them up that way. But let me just go through the list. I'm going to go on a little spiel here, but some of the players they've drafted. So they drafted Kyrie, Tristan Thompson, who I guess played an okay part for them in their championship. They drafted Dion Waiters, Anthony Bennett, who is arguably the worst number 1 pick bust ever. They drafted Andrew Wiggins, who then eventually went to Minnesota in a trade for Kevin Love, which again was, I guess, an important part in their championship. They've got Colin Sexton at number 8. They've got Darius Garland, who has improved, and Isaac Okoro has improved, and then Mobley. So it's only really been the last couple of years they've actually got their draft picks together, because all the other ones they've either traded away or haven't really developed into anything. Now, the thing that I find interesting is the moves that they've made. Because in their current roster, if you look at some of the guys that are making the biggest impact, Jarrett Allen, this guy was on the Brooklyn Nets, looked like he was... I think he actually went to the playoffs with him and like D'Angelo, a team that didn't look like they were going to make it that far. They picked up him, who's really locking down defensively, versatile big. They've also traded and got Karis LeVert in that multi-team trade. Obviously, LeVert was injured, I think, at the time. Went to, I think, the Pacers. Didn't really do much there, but now is making a good impact on the team. It's little moves that they're slowly building, and then they get a guy like Mitchell, who obviously, again, leading a playoff team with the Jazz. Kind of icing on the cake for them.
Oh, absolutely.
I feel like is this kind of like a culmination of all these little bits coming together? Do you think this is a championship team right here? I think is what I'm getting to. Eventually.
Absolutely, yes. I think with how the current NBA is looking, are they as good as Boston? No, but you only need a couple of good games, and for them to have that's the thing. We've still got so many games to go. It only takes 1 or 2 injuries, and then everything's wide open.
It's very true.
And they lucked out so hard with Jarrett Allen, because for whatever reason the Rockets didn't want to keep, because the Rockets got Jarrett Allen and they traded him straight away for absolute rubbish, which I'm really disappointed about.
Yeah,
I think Rockets with Jarrett Allen, it would be really fun, but they got an absolute steal of a deal with Jarrett Allen from the Rockets, who were just trying to get rid of him for pennies, honestly.
Yeah. No, so I think it's just an interesting rebuild procedure, because I think, especially coming from a championship too, I think the teams generally would have a little bit longer to rebuild once they explode, especially after losing LeBron. That's obviously a huge asset gone. But the fact that they've had the options to rebuild through the draft and haven't necessarily capitalized on it, but then they've made trades instead, I think is like props to their management, I think, because you have a lot of managers who aren't willing to kind of take a risk on players, especially if there are like injuries involved. But the fact that they back the talent, and then I think it reaps rewards. So I think, kind of an interesting case study there. And I hope they do really well this season. I hope to see more of it.
I think that this team is 100% in the championship hunt this year.
Mm.
And I thought they were in the championship hunt potential. Well, maybe not the championship hunt, but I expected them to go a little bit further last year, but then they sort of fell apart at the last minute.
Yeah. Last year they were definitely surprising everyone with their flashes of talent, especially when we saw them up kind of around that like third, fourth position.
Yeah.
And then they did tend to drop down a little bit in the second half of the season. I think injuries played a part in that.
And then they just couldn't keep that momentum going. But now they're absolutely better with Donovan Mitchell. I expect this team. I'm going to be really honest. I would love for this team to make at least the conference finals.
Yeah, and I can see that genuinely happening.
And I think that's achievable. Look, Brooklyn's fourth now, and they were out of the top 10 at some point. So, it's really, really open. I think between the top teams, there's not a lot between them. I still think at the moment that Boston has a slight edge over everyone else. I think they have the most complete roster. But you compare Cleveland to the Celtics, to the Bucks, to the Nets, to the Hawks. I don't think the Pacers will do well this year. They're in sixth somehow. I don't think the Raptors will... Raptors will make the top 8, but they won't get past the first round. Philly, if they can get their stuff together and maybe get rid of Doc Rivers. But there's there's no unstoppable team right now.
Yeah, absolutely. There are multiple contending threats. So
it will come down to who can stay the most healthy, because the NBA is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, we've talked a lot about Cleveland, but just wanted to add some context behind their success. I thought that was an interesting thing to look at.
From the land.
100%.
So while it's this might be an East-heavy episode, but have you heard? I mentioned it to you, but for the podcast, did you hear about the little drama llama that's been happening in Atlanta with Trae Young and the coach?
Yep. I think we mentioned this, but we haven't mentioned it on the podcast yet. So this is an interesting take. Hit us. So
there's reports coming out that Trae Young and coach Nate McMillan had an exchange at Friday's shoot-around that led to Young choosing not to attend the home team's win again over Denver. Basically, the rumor then says that Trae Young was receiving treatment during shoot-around, and so then the coach said, you either come off the bench because you weren't here for the shoot-around, or you don't enter the arena. Because Trae didn't get treatment at the arena, or at the facility. He got treatment outside of the facility. So he missed the shoot-around. And so Trae decided not to show up. And got his injury increased so that, he was in inverted commas, injured. But basically Trae called the bluff, per se. But there's an update to this story. But initially, what are your thoughts? You've got your star player who's playing through some sort of niggle. He missed shoot around where they, you sort of go, it's like your last team practice. Do you let your star player get away with not making shoot around, or do you hold him to the same standards that the rest of the team would be held to?
Yeah, I think you have to uphold the same standards for everyone, whether it be number 1 on the team or number 15 on the bench. I think you have to, especially as a leader, in fact, I think you'd almost more want to impose that because you need to have them lead by example, right? I think, look, Trae, obviously incredible talent, playing great this season, still scoring threat, 27 points a game, almost 10 assists a game. Clearly the leader of this team in terms of performance, but I think maybe attitude, he's not being the leader of this team. So I think, I can understand ego-wise, it's not great coming off the bench if you are a star, but I mean, you have to still respect the coach. You can't undermine them, because that's when you get really bad situations happening in the locker room.
Why? Explain this to me. Why does everyone not everyone, but why do so many people that play in the NBA have such a fixation on whether they start or come off the bench? There was a period of time where Russ refused to come off the bench. For me, right, if you're not 100%, but you still want to try and push through, and the coach is going hey, let's put you on the let's have you coming off the bench today so your load's a little bit lighter. Wouldn't Trey be cheering? He gets to come off the bench against the second unit. He can easily pad his stats. Like, why would you have a big row over not starting? Can you?
I mean, I feel like the only reasoning is just like the sheer, like, if in your own mind, if you're like a starter or if you're off the bench, you're like a bench player. I mean, I think it's kind of crazy to assume that, like, yeah, Trey would be considered a bench player, but if there's a legitimate reason for you coming off the bench, yeah, embrace it. I think, yeah, in different situation like with Russ, it's more of a performance thing. Like, it makes sense for him to come off the bench and dominate that way. For Trey, it's more if he's not 100% physically. So I think there's a fair reason why wouldn't you do it. But I think the players that can actually just kind of take that on and not take it like personally, we've seen some great six men. Obviously, like Manu Ginobili, who's pretty much like the epitome of a six man. Most of the seasons he was in San Antonio, he was the best shooting guard on that team. Like, he should have been starting. It wasn't even down to like injury concerns. It wasn't down to other reasons. It was just down to how San Antonio played. He could have taken that the wrong way and gone and found another team, and he could have started and maybe got more points on a different team. But he knew that it worked with that system.
Yeah,
I don't understand why players put ego into it when for the team, which they should really be putting first, it works
exactly.
better.
If Trae Young was not 100%, he missed shoot around, and he was being offered to, like, you could still play the game, but we want you to come off the bench. It's not just a punishment for missing shoot around. It's just everyone needs to be at shoot around. In my opinion, I think that's a great if you don't make the shoot around, you shouldn't get rewarded for that. But at the same time, if he's missed shoot around because he was injured, like he was getting treatment, wouldn't you want to have an easier night, come off the bench, not make that any worse, and instead of playing through that injury? I just don't understand it. There was a follow-up where a rumor came. Like, the rumor follow-up is that when asked how the Hawks locker room felt, whose side were they on, most people sided with the coach.
Yeah, I actually find that bit the most interesting thing about this reported incident, is that the players siding with the coach. That says a lot to me.
That is, look, concerning, because you don't want to get a rep as being a diva. And if you want to lead a team, like, that's the thing, right? If you're going to lead the team but they don't respect you, or they think that you're an idiot, or they think you're selfish, like, when you need people to dig deep, they're not going to rally around you.
Yeah. And I think the respect is so important. Like, you can have all the stats in the world, but if you haven't got your team actually respecting what you do, that's not going to, especially come playoff time when you need that mental strength, that togetherness, that's not going to cut it. So,
and obviously, I think there's a little bit of, like, Trey's feeling the pressure of being the top guy, but let's be real, he's not very efficient, and I feel like he's blaming the coach for his inefficiency, and he needs to get better.
Yeah, I think this season in particular, it's a good point that you bring up in terms of efficiency. Like, he hasn't dropped off too much in points overall per game, but 3-point percentage has dropped 10% from 38% last season to 28% this season. So he's having a little bit of a rough shooting year. So, yeah, I think that's just adding even more concern on top of that.
I think this is one of his worst years. Like, this is almost like up there with, like, his first couple of rookie years where he had an absolute shocker.
Yeah. So I think, look, it comes down to this. I think either they correct the issue, they kind of like sit down and make it clear what standards need to be in place, and then get to the bottom of it. Because as a whole, their roster's actually looking great this season. Adding DeJounte Murray, I think they're looking quite strong. Or could you potentially see it where the point where Trey isn't going to back down, and then they have to, I don't know, trade him or play him or not let him play or something? Could you see it getting that far?
Look, they've kind of put all in with him, but I don't know.
Franchise player.
But it's also like, it's one of those things where, like, look, he's a great player, but in today's NBA, he's short. He can't play defense. And if it doesn't matter how good of a scorer he is, if he's not the full package, there's only so far you can go with that.
Yeah. That's fair because honestly, like these days, you kind of need to be a two-way player. You need to have defensive capabilities as well as scoring, which I think they picked up a little bit more in Dejounte Murray. I think he's more of a two-way player. So maybe that could be something they end up kind of going with him as the leader of the team. Move Trey for someone. I don't know. It seems crazy though because he's such like a Hawks player through and through at this point. Iconic moments at Madison Square Garden against the Knicks.
It's
Yeah, you think they want to hold on to him.
to finish off with Trey. I think that look, most of his stats, like year to year, right? You want to see your stats get better, increase.
Yeah,
And so his 2022, and again, we're only 24 games in, so it's not the full sample size, right?
Yep.
But against his career stats, he's averaging more points. He's averaging more assists, point 0.5 of an assist more per game. But he's already he's got a field goal percentage of 43.7 in his career, which isn't amazing, I don't think. But it's gone
considering
down.
he shoots a lot of deep shots, it's not bad.
Yeah.
necessarily.
But he's down to 40%, 40.8 this year, and his career 3-point percent is 35, and he's gone down to 29 this year.
Yeah.
And his
So
efficiency
it's been a pretty steep drop off.
and his efficiency has dropped by 5% as well. So look, I'm usually pretty hard on the coaches, but in this case, Trae Young, you got to get your stuff together, bro. It's you know when someone goes, it's like it's not me, it's you. But like Trae, it's definitely you, bro.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. Like performance-wise, he's had a bit of a drop-off. I think that can improve. But yeah, I think the attitude-wise, I mean, this is all reported, so end of the day, we don't know the exact story. But it's sounding like if the team's backing up the coach, he has to put in the work to get the team back on his side. Because this team, functioning well, could be a lot scarier than they are currently. So
Exactly.
yeah.
So we've got a bit of a shorter one today. Please like, subscribe, share. We've got TikTok, we've got Instagram, we've got YouTube. Give us some love. We're really pushing this year to really get our voices out there. So give us some love. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. I'm Harry. That's Ben. We out. Peace.
See ya.
Da, 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 da.